Coinbase is said to be working on a pitch to regulators on how to oversee the crypto industry. So sources say that the company plans to roll out a plan in the coming days, so that is this week, and it intends to argue what should and should not be defined as a security. Very interesting, considering the last time we defined what should be or should not be a security was, I think, in the 1940s. But Will, I'm going to kick this down to you. Do you think that Coinbase has a chance here to pitch a solution to regulators?
The first thing that comes to mind is like 7-Eleven regulating how they cook their own hot dogs in-house instead of the FDA kind of making decisions on things like that. And I just don't love the image there. Maybe that's unfair, but I don't understand, or I don't really like the idea of, if you're going to have regulation in the first place, having people in the industry make their own rules. I think like that's why you have external third bodies if you are going to accept regulation as a thing. I'm not a huge proponent of regulation in the first place, but if you're going to accept it as a premise, as like a needed thing in an industry, then that's why you have a third party do it, just to be judicious about it. David, I want to get your take on this though.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more open-minded about this in principle, but the fact that it's Coinbase makes me a little bit less optimistic. I think that there really is a space for trying to redefine some of these regulatory regimes in deep ways. And I really would love to see more deep thinking being done about how that works by people who really know their stuff. And Coinbase knows the industry, and Coinbase obviously can afford to hire really sophisticated lawyers who could lay out some interesting arguments. And so in a perfect world, I would actually love to get that. But unfortunately, this being Coinbase, I am anticipating that this is going to be pretty self-serving in the way it lays these things out. We know that Coinbase did this thing called the Crypto Ratings Council a couple of years ago that was supposed to provide some analysis of whether particular crypto assets were securities. And I didn't look into it too deeply myself, but that was not received particularly well in my memory in terms of how, I guess, honest and not just self-serving it was. So I'm not against this in principle, but I'm not sure Coinbase is really going to be able to contribute much because of its Coinbase.
Yeah, I'm going to cut Coinbase a little bit more slack than thanks, David. I'm going to cut them a little bit more slack than you guys have. Although I definitely understand the two different directions that this could go to. Like when you have companies lobbying the government, they're usually lobbying out of self-interest. There's a lot of rent seeking. There's a lot of regulatory capture, and we need to be mindful of that. That being said, Coinbase has come out publicly against the SEC. They have done a lot of things to push back in favor of the industry. They fought the FBI on, revealing huge amounts of data on their users. So they have done a good job in looking out for their customers' best interests here. So until I actually see their proposal, I'm definitely not going to shoot it down, because when it comes down to it, I absolutely don't want regulators outside of the industry regulating this, because all they're thinking about is the risks, and they're ignoring all of the upside that people are getting from these platforms. They're just like, okay, I'm honed in on zero risk. How do we get to zero risk? That just doesn't happen. There are all kinds of trade-offs that happen in life. And so when you have people inside the industry, they actually understand, what kind of value is being provided to consumers, and they're careful not to curtail that. Whereas government regulators outside of the industry are usually just focused on, well, I don't care what we curtail as long as, we get some stringent rules in there. It's exactly what Lawsky said at the Bitcoin hearings for the bit license, when he, pulled the quote about I don't care if 1,000 flowers die and are not allowed to bloom as long as we catch one bad guy. And that to me is the antithesis of, the spirit of humanity, right? We strive towards progress. We make mistakes along the way. We shouldn't be stopping people from making mistakes. If it catches one bad guy, it's just a terrible way to run society. So I'm interested to see what Coinbase comes up with, and if they can help be a strong force for the crypto space at large, which is not outside of the realm of possibilities, right? Because Coinbase completely relies on crypto being a thing that's embraced by a lot of people. They want consumers to be happy. I mean, they're really relying on all of that. So sure, they could create some bad laws that necessitate a central entity like Coinbase. So maybe be like a custody or something like that. We'll have to wait and see what the details are, but it's definitely not obvious that this is a net negative thing right from the outset. But Jen, I'll throw this back to you.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Naomi. I see this as a positive thing for the industry. At the end of the day, they're not making laws. They're suggesting what could happen. And so far, we've seen nothing happen. So I look forward to seeing what they come up with. And hopefully, if it can serve as a kickoff point for other very smart people in the industry to weigh in on so that we can get some more clarity.